this video tutorial, we're going to cover how to adjust your camera's motion detection settings or motion detection sensitivity. When you're looking at your live camera view and you see the motion detection symbol, which is the red man that you see to the right of live recording, ideally you want to get it to a point where you only see this when you have true motion on the screen. And there are factors that can influence that'll give you false motion alert. Things like lighting or trees swaying in the wind or shadows. So I want to show you how to correct that, because at the end of the day, you want to try to get as close to 100% true motion detection as possible. So when you go back to your camera's playback and you see motion, you can count on when you click on the section where you see motion, you're going to see something that you want to see. And the way that you adjust that is in your motion settings. And here's how it's done. Right click, left click on main menu, log into your system. Once you've logged into your system, go down to the bottom and left click where it says event. Once you click on event, you're going to be in the motion detection setting. If not, if you're anywhere else, make sure you left click here where it says motion detection. This is where you adjust your motion detection settings. Now, when you adjust your motion detection settings, it's one camera at a time. You got to adjust it for each individual camera. Do not use the copy function in the motion detection settings, because if you do that, you're going to mess your system up, because remember, each camera has a different scene, so one setting will not work on another camera. So don't ever use the copy function when you adjust motion detection. But so we're here on channel 1, which would be this particular camera. To adjust the motion detection setting, the first thing you want to do is make sure motion detection is enabled. If it's not enabled, then it won't do motion detection at all. But once it's enabled and you want to adjust the settings, you go to the right of the channel number and left click on set. And that will bring you into this screen. On this particular camera, you'll see the red shaded areas are the areas that you're telling your cameras you want to detect motion. In this particular example, we have a busy highway in front of the shop. So if we were to have this entire screen shaded, the camera would trigger motion all day long because the cars never stop. So what you're trying to do on this particular screen is deselect things that'll give you false positive. By all means, if you want the cars going down the street, just leave it selected. But if not, you simply left click, then you drag, and then the shade goes away. So you remove shade off of everything that could potentially give you a false motion detection. If you want to add it back, just left click and re-drag it and then release. So for most instances, it'll be things like streets or even a tree. If you look right here, you see we have a tree. It's a small tree, but larger trees, sometimes they sway in the wind. That can give you false positive. Make sure you get rid of those. If it's like a home or business and it's covering an AC unit, an outdoor air conditioning that has a fan turning, make sure you deselect that, because you want to get rid of things that can cause you to get false motion alerts. Now, that's the first thing you do. The second thing that you want to do is adjust the sensitivity. If you move your mouse up toward the top of the screen, the sensitivity adjustment will pop up. And this is where you see the sensitivity. By default, it's set on 80. You should never have a reason to make it any higher than that, but you may have a reason to raise it down, and you'll do that if you've already eliminated things like trees or cars going down the street, and you still notice when you go back and play back your tape, you still get a lot of false positives. What's a false positive? If you're clicking on motion detection on your playback, which is the yellow, and you're not seeing motion, well, that means something triggered the motion detection. So adjust that sensitivity. So the first thing you got to do is make sure there's nothing like cars, AC units or trees, but then you may want to lower the sensitivity. So I've made my adjustment, lowered the sensitivity. I right click, that takes me back. Keep in mind, this information has not been saved yet. So right click and hit apply and then save. Now, if I go back in by going to event, set. I see that it's saved. If you were to exit out of here and just continue to exit without saving, that information then saved. So make sure that has been saved. But that's how you adjust your motion detection settings. You may have to kind of play around with it, especially at night. You know, if you have insects, shadows, and things like that, you'll adjust the areas, then you'll adjust the sensitivity, and then finally, you may want to play along with the thresholds. For all practical purposes, threshold should stay on 0. But if you've adjusted the sensitivity, you've adjusted the areas, and you're still getting false positives, kind of increase the threshold. And that threshold is simply telling you the amount of time that motion has to be there before it actually triggers something. So if you increase the threshold, that means the motion will have to last longer before it triggers. That works great at night where you have insects that are flying. If an insect flies directly in front of your camera, if it's directly in front of the lens, it may look 10 feet tall, so it's going to trigger motion. But you don't want insects, of course, triggering your motion. So if you were to increase the threshold, and that means that the insect will have to be still in front of that camera for long periods before it actually triggers. But you kind of be careful with that because you don't want to make it take too long to trigger the particular motion. But that's how you actually adjust your motion detection settings. Make sure you make any changes here. When you right click out, make sure you hit the apply and then the save button. Thank you for watching.